Backfields are changing as we speak. Running backs are trading places in free agency, and there's not much that we can do for our dynasty teams except sit back and watch the carnage. In today's video, I'll be breaking down all of the running back moves that have happened so far in the NFL's free agency frenzy and talk about the affecting, dynasty and redraft implications for everybody involved. So later today, I'll drop a similar video, or maybe tomorrow, for the quarterbacks and for the pass catchers, but I figured the running back position was the best in free agency. We needed to spend some time really delving into these situations. So before we get into it, as always, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy at any point. Now let's hit the intro. All right, so you guys can see the list of running back moves that have happened just as a quick summary here. This is from PFF's free agency tracker. You guys can see the top of the moves there and then all of the resulting moves. Here are the running back free agency moves that have happened. I'll delve into each one kind of individually, at least the ones that matter. So we're going to start with the franchise tags, right? Because these guys were the top of the running back market. If they got to free agency, they were definitely going to command the most money. And since all these guys were RB1s in fantasy last year, I figured I would start with them. In my mind, the three backs that would have immediately still had, high-end RB2 or low-end RB1 type of value, even if they changed situations, even if they changed teams, were Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, and Josh Jacobs. If you guys roster these players on dynasty teams, this, in my opinion, was actually one of the better outcomes that we could have asked for. All these guys get franchise tagged. Ideally, they probably would have re-signed with their team. That would have been the best case scenario where, Saquon Barkley gets a multi-year guaranteed deal. Tony Pollard, same thing. Josh Jacobs, same thing, because we know that these teams know how to use these players. They're going to use them in Jacobs and Saquon Barkley's case as, workhorse running backs, and in Tony Pollard's case, in the efficient manner in which he's been used the past couple years. Like I said, with Barkley, the Giants are trying to win, right? They made the playoffs last year. Brian Daboll in his first year. They re-signed Daniel Jones. They bring in Darren Waller via trade, which I'll talk about more in depth in the other video. And Saquon Barkley is going to help them win. And he's set up for another top 5 fantasy season as the starting running back for this team. They re-signed Matt Breida as well as like his handcuff. They might draft a guy later on in the draft, but for the most part, it looks to be the Saquon Barkley show. Again, Saquon Barkley is a 25-year-old running back. So if you're rostering him in Dynasty, I hope you're competing. And if you're in a rebuilding situation and you roster Saquon Barkley, I suggest getting him off of your roster. So him staying in New York for one more year, even though it means that, we're going to have more ambiguity next year about his situation, his contract status or whatever, I'm still willing to buy into Saquon Barkley for, a late first rounder, a mid first rounder, closer to the season. Don't trade for him right now. But once we get closer to the season and you guys start to get an idea of, your landscape of your team and what you need to help you compete, I think Saquon Barkley is worth a buy at this current point because he's set up for another top 5 fantasy season. If you get that production out of him, he's definitely going to help out your team. Josh Jacobs, McDaniels may be coaching for his job this year. And Josh Jacobs is one of the few bright spots of the Raiders in 2022. They bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think the offense is going to change a whole lot. I think Jimmy Garoppolo to Derek Carr is a pretty similar type of move. They add Jacoby Myers as well to replace what they lost with Darren Waller in the trade. So I think, you get a 3-stack of wide receivers with Adams, with Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow. You have Josh Jacobs carrying the ball as well. I think with Josh Jacobs, you're looking at another, top 12 type of season. So again, I think this is another situation where I'd probably be looking to sell Josh Jacobs, just given that I think his market is overinflated in general. But this could give you an easy opportunity because at least you can sell, he's back in Las Vegas. He's going to get a workhorse type of role on the franchise tag. And that's exactly what your league mates are going to be looking for. So Tony Pollard, and the last franchise tag candidate, Ezekiel Elliott was actually released. So it's going to be the Tony Pollard show in 2023. They're probably going to add a running back either in free agency with the remaining guys available, maybe a Damian Harris type or something. Or they go out into the NFL draft and they draft a Zach Charbonnet or a Chase Brown or a Tank Bigsby or something like that. When you're dealing with running backs in Dynasty, I'm pretty much only focused on immediate production, especially with Pollard, with Jacobs, and with Barkley, because they're all like 24, 25 years old. So these guys staying in that RB1 range for redraft next year is huge for their dynasty value to you guys that are contenders or for you guys that are looking to buy running backs as contenders. So definitely good news all around that they got the franchise tag. It's better, in my opinion, that they get the franchise tag and stay with their current teams than Saquon Barkley signing like a 3-year deal with a shit team that's not going to use them as well, or we at least don't know how they're going to use them relative to what we know about his usage in New York. So let's move on to the RB2 types. And I think there was 3 other guys available outside of the 3 that I already talked about that had a chance to command some money, had a chance to be RB2s or better from like a redraft perspective next year, given the new landing spots that they went to. And again, remember, with running backs, all we really care about are guaranteed years, guaranteed money in the contract, because usually if a running back signs a 3-year deal with only 1 year of guarantees, they're probably only going to play 1 year with that team, because running back production falls off a cliff quickly. And also, if you have a down season as a running back, you're probably not going to get the benefit of the doubt to play out the rest of your contract. So we usually only care about 1 year, 2-year type of windows with the running back position, especially when it comes to guaranteed money. The 3 guys that I think have a legitimate shot to be like RB2 types in fantasy this year that signed in the past couple days were David Montgomery, who signed a 3-year deal, $18 million with $11 million guaranteed with the Detroit Lions, which virtually locks him in to his full salary for 2 years. So basically a 2-year, $11 million deal. Miles Sanders signs a 4-year, $25 million deal with the Carolina Panthers. The guarantees are not known at this point, but you got to figure that it's at least a 2-year deal in guarantees, probably around 11 to 15 million, somewhere in that range. So Miles Sanders to the Panthers on a 4-year deal. And then Jamaal Williams signs a 3-year, $12 million contract with the Saints with $8 million guaranteed. So again, pretty much a 2-year, $8 million deal with guaranteed money. So let's tackle the Lions first, right? We get David Montgomery going in, Jamaal Williams coming out. This is an easy transition for Detroit, right? They lose their goal line back, their main ball carrier with Jamaal Williams last year, who signed with the Saints, like I mentioned, and he had, a league leading like 17 rushing touchdowns. But in my opinion, they got a big time upgrade in David Montgomery, because David Montgomery has forced a missed tackle on 20% of his carries over the last 3 years since 2020, with Jamaal Williams down at 12.6%, 2.85 yards after contact per attempt for David Montgomery versus 2.76 yards after contact per attempt for Jamaal Williams. We got a guy who's just a better ball carrier, right? He's an upgrade, in my opinion. He stands to inherit the goal line role that Jamaal Williams vacates. Again, Jamaal Williams and DeAndre Swift combined for 89 red zone touches last year, which led the NFL running backs. And Jamaal Williams himself commanded 57 of those touches, which was second in the NFL of individual running backs. Vacated production is usually a bit of a fugaz when it comes to like wide receivers and tight end production. But when it comes to running backs, we care about roles, right? And they vacate the role of the goal line back, the early down banger that Jamaal Williams was occupying. And now David Montgomery is really the only guy that we have at that position. This is also, in my opinion, big time bad news for DeAndre Swift, because it kind of further illustrates what we kind of already knew about the Detroit Lions coaching staff, which is that they don't have a ton of faith in DeAndre Swift to stay healthy. There was a point in time where we thought, hey, DeAndre Swift can be like a 70% opportunity share running back and carry a workload, but he kind of failed to demonstrate that he can stay healthy and hold up to that workload over the past 2 seasons. So I think he's kind of minimized to a pass catching back at best. And maybe, this is a 50-50 split, similar to what we saw in the good games of DeAndre Swift and Jamaal Williams last year. But for the most part, I think if I have the choice in redraft leagues right now, I'll probably take, 7th to 9th round David Montgomery instead of ponying up a 4th or a 5th round pick for DeAndre Swift. And in Dynasty, I think David Montgomery is a perfect, RB3 to 5 type for your contending rosters. If you were holding David Montgomery, I think this was a good outcome. I think this was one of the better case scenarios that we could have been looking at. He'll probably give you top 20 production again next year. If people are really excited, if everybody's like just penciling him in for 17 touchdowns like Jamaal Williams had, and you can get an early to mid second round pick for him in 2023 or in 2024, I would be comfortable, offloading him for that, especially if you guys are not in a winning window. But if we get closer to the NFL season, if it's September or whatever, and you need an RB3 for your roster, an RB4 for your roster, and you can ship a mid to late 2024 second for David Montgomery, I'm definitely comfortable doing that if I'm in a contending window. But if I were a betting man, I'd say the Lions will be out of the running back market at this point in time until maybe late day 3 of the NFL draft. So I think going into next year, we're going to be looking at a Montgomery Swift 2-headed monster in Detroit. So Miles Sanders goes to the Carolina Panthers. The money is a little bit surprising here, but good for Miles Sanders. I mean, cashing out on a magical year from the Philadelphia Eagles. This money that they gave him, in my opinion, kind of precludes them from taking a running back early, at least in the first, 2 to 3 rounds, probably. They might add, a 5th rounder on Deuce Vaughn or Kenny McIntosh or something like that. But to me, this signals that Miles Sanders is going to be the new starting running back for this Carolina Panthers offense, headed by probably CJ Stroud, if not whatever other rookie quarterback they take at number 1. So the money puts Miles Sanders as the 10th highest running back, highest paid running back in the NFL, around what Austin Eckler makes. Obviously, he's asking for a trade right now because he doesn't feel like he's being paid enough. And then James Conner as well. So the interesting thing for me with Miles Sanders is how this affects his pass catching role. Because in Philadelphia, Miles Sanders was not the type of guy that was going to give you much as a receiver because he had, a mobile quarterback in Jalen Hurts. He had other pass catching backs to compete for routes and targets with Kenny Gainwell and with Boston Scott. But once upon a time with Miles Sanders, we were talking about a guy who commanded 63 targets as a rookie and 50 receptions as a rookie and had, a 10% target share. So there's a scenario in which Miles Sanders actually has a decent pass catching workload in this new Carolina Panthers offense. CJ Stroud, if he is the pick at number 1, is not the most mobile quarterback in the world. So there's a chance that he could check down quite a bit for Miles Sanders. There isn't really a capable pass catching back on the offense right now, too. With Carolina's roster, they might draft somebody on day 3. They might sign Nyheim Hines or J.D. McKissic or something if they get released. Again, people want to go overboard and sell an early second for Miles Sanders or an early second and a third or something like that for Miles Sanders in March when we don't need to roster a lineup until September. Absolutely go ahead and sell high on Miles Sanders. But if we get closer to the season, and right now people are kind of valuing him as like a mid to late second round type of asset, and you can go out and acquire him for that, a volume play type of RB2, that I think you could do worse as a contender. I really think that you can go out and acquire this guy as a flex play. Not now. Don't do it now. There's definitely a lot that can change. But, come September or whatever, if he still has the same kind of role that we're projecting at the moment, then he could definitely be a big time value in redraft leagues and a guy that you could get for cheap in dynasty leagues. So Jamaal Williams to the New Orleans Saints is kind of the last deal that I want to talk about here. This is setting up perfectly now for the Saints to draft Jahmyr Gibbs at 40 or at 29 if they wanted to. And you have your early down banger with Jamaal Williams to complement a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. But the odd thing, of course, is that Alvin Kamara is still on the roster, and no big deal, right? They can cut him soon anyways, right? He's going to get suspended probably. I think they're going to cut bait with him or trade him. No, right? My goodness, this contract is structured poorly. I expected Alvin Kamara to get cut or traded this offseason before I looked at this contract, but they would have to eat so much dead cap. And not only would they have to eat a lot of dead cap just at face value, they have to eat dead cap for like 4 years into 2026 if they wanted to cut this dude. $25 million in dead cap this year for a running back, $17 million in 2024, another, $9.7 million in 2025, and then $5.8 million in 2026. Who the hell structured this contract, dude? This is as bad as Ezekiel Elliott's contract when you look at it. Unless there's some kind of like out in his contract because of the legal situation, it looks like Alvin Kamara is going to be a Saint for a long time. And in that case, he's probably going to assume his old role, right? Back when Mark Ingram was in town and he was like actually a good running back, we saw Alvin Kamara be like a pass catching specialist, efficient type of running back in his younger years, and Jamaal Williams might be taking over that previous Mark Ingram role. In any case, I think this is a big time downgrade for Jamaal Williams. Obviously, the best case scenario for him, in my opinion, was to just stay in Detroit and be the early down back there and in a good offense. What we know the Detroit Lions can put up points. If people are excited about Jamaal Williams in any kind of way, if they think he's going to be like the new Mark Ingram or something, I would probably take any second round pick on him in a trade. But if nobody bites, then you probably should just hold him. And then I'll quickly rapid fire the rest of the moves that we saw at the running back position. We're still waiting on signings from Devin Singletary, from Kareem Hunt, from Damian Harris, Deontay Foreman specifically. Those guys I think should have some value on the open market. Like I said, I bet one of those guys is a Cowboy, whether it's Hunt, Damian Harris, or Deontay Foreman specifically. I think they'd be a good complement to Tony Pollard. The Dolphins end up keeping their top 2 running backs from last year. Jeff Wilson's back on a 2-year, $8.2 million deal. Raheem Mostert back on a 2-year, $5.6 million deal. I don't think this precludes them from drafting somebody in like the second or the third round if they wanted to. But worst case scenario, I think both guys kind of retained the redraft appeal that they had last year, right? Knowing that you could get, second round picks or third round picks, 2 third round picks at worst, for Jeff Wilson midseason or Raheem Mostert midseason is definitely good news for those of you guys that are rebuilders and somehow just have these guys on your roster still, because I do think come the actual start of the season, it's possible that these guys are sneaky pickups for contenders and you can get, 2/3 or maybe a late second for one of these guys, something closer to September if you need to sell these running backs. And even if you're a contender and you had to give up like the 304 in the rookie draft or like your 2024 third to go after some running back depth with Jeff Wilson, I don't think that's a terrible move for a contender to make. And then we also have Rashaad Penny going to the Philadelphia Eagles on a 1-year, $1.3 million deal. Obviously, the money isn't very good, and I'm kind of shocked he didn't get a little bit more than that. But this is interesting considering we kind of know that Rashaad Penny is almost like a star caliber running back when he's actually on the field and he's actually healthy. I don't think it precludes them from drafting Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs at the end of the first round or something like that, or any other back on day 2 if they wanted to draft Roschon Johnson in the 3rd round or something. I think that wouldn't be out of the question for Philadelphia during the NFL draft. But definitely Rashaad Penny sees a bit of an uptick in value. He's going to be playing in a good offense, even if it's an ambiguous situation with a rookie there. I still think we're talking about a guy that could have like flex appeal early on in the NFL season. Then we get on to some extra moves. We have Alexander Mattison going on to the Minnesota Vikings back there on a 2-year, $7 million deal. It looks like he's going to be Dalvin Cook's handcuff yet again. But the only thing now is that Dalvin Cook is much older. He's more susceptible to injury. I might consider using this kind of letdown if people thought that Mattison was going to cash out in free agency on some new team as a starter, as a reason to maybe go out and buy him. And even now, in the middle of March, you might be able to get this guy for like a mid-third round pick. And Dalvin Cook could still get traded, right? There's still a lot of chance that Dalvin Cook is not on the roster week 1 of 2023, or, he could even get cut. And even though I think that they'd add some competition, let's say they trade Dalvin Cook next week, they'd probably still draft some competition in the 3rd, 4th round of the NFL draft. But Mattison would probably have a leg up in that backfield, knowing the offense being there for the last couple of years. So I do think Mattison, honestly, a sneaky winner of free agency. I know it's not like the greatest landing spot. He didn't go sign, to the Falcons or something to be their starting running back. But I do think it's actually not a bad move from his perspective. He could be a high value handcuff yet again, at the very least. And, at the best case scenario, Dalvin Cook gets traded or he gets injured, whatever the case is. So a couple other moves here. J-Rob goes to the Patriots, 2 years, $8 million. I think it's definitely interesting. He's a good stash as like the new Damian Harris in this backfield. But I actually think the best winner of this situation is Ramondre Stevenson, because if this is all they add, then Ramondre Stevenson's going to be wheels up, like top 2 round redraft pick, top 3 round redraft pick. Samaje Perine, 2 years, $7.5 million deal to the Denver Broncos. To me, this inspires a lot of confidence in Javonte Williams, because it was definitely possible that they went out and signed like David Montgomery or somebody a little bit more threatening, or drafted somebody highly, which they could still do. Hopefully this is all they add. It's just Samaje Perine added to this backfield. He could definitely be relevant early on in the 2023 season if Javonte Williams is still recovering from his injury. But if this is all they add, this probably is good sign for Javonte Williams and his health. So that is the end of the running back recap. Like I said, there's still a couple guys that haven't signed yet, but I wanted to get the bulk of these guys talked about. Maybe I'll, briefly talk about the rest of them on a later point in time if there's a lot of signings that still come in. Like I said, I'm going to talk about the quarterbacks and the pass catchers either later today or early tomorrow, so definitely be on the lookout for that video. If you guys haven't heard the news yet, I've been talking about it all week. We are starting a brand new listener dynasty startup, and the way that you can get into it is by checking out our new site. We've partnered with Flock Fantasy, we've partnered with Fantasy Endgame, we've partnered with Fantasyland and Dynastyland to bring you guys flockfantasy.com, which is the new home for our rankings, for our bonus content, for our articles, for our databases. We are shutting down our Patreon by the end of the NFL draft. So definitely, if you guys are members of our Patreon, or you guys are just interested in our rankings and interested in our bonus content, definitely give that a look. Definitely check that out. You can get a 2-day free trial by using the promo code FSE, and you'll also get 30% off all annual packages. And if you guys sign up annually, you basically get 6 months totally for free. So you can basically be rest assured, sign up, one-time payment. You'll get covered all the way through the dynasty season, all the way through the redraft season. You won't have to worry about it until this time next year. So definitely check that out if it interests you. The only way to get into our new listener league is to be a member on Flock Fantasy. So if you want to be in a league with us, unfortunately, you're going to have to go sign up over there, but I promise you it'll be absolutely worth your while. Try it out for 2 days for free just to see if you like what you see, but make sure you sign up for a package by Saturday and fill out the Google form that's pinned down below in the description, pinned down below in the pinned comments, and you can be entered for a chance to win a listener league spot. So if that interests you, go check it out. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.